Welcome to the Scent of Beauty. My name is Susan, and this video is titled Resolution in parentheses Modulation. This is a series, and this is part 5. We have learned a lot in this series, I have, regarding resolution, New Year's resolution. That's how it started out in, us taking a look at always making a resolutions that's not completed by the end of the year. When the brain and the heart emotion keeps going in a loop without the ability to incorporate our psyche, our belief system, sometimes not even aware that there is another component. So there's a vacillating between I think, I feel, I think, and not getting the modulation that we need, the amplitude, the frequency, and the phase model to get us beyond thinking and feeling into the realm of completion, finish, manifestation. In the other videos I mentioned, there's no magic in the new quote-unquote year. Although our brain and our heart emotion tends to differ, we can take a look going forward at the connected network that we're wired to, conclusions that were drawn before an attempt was made in regards to a resolution, and just having some awareness of how do I think, feel, and believe. And so the question is, what is holding us back? Could it be our wired connection to sufficient, even if we're not satisfied? Conscious, like we have these conscious feelings operating mostly in the circumference of our biological disposition, which is our emotions. While in the hardwired temperament, there are beliefs that we are not consciously aware of. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. I'm wired that way. What you see is what you get. I'm too old to learn new things. These are all descriptions of a message that was sent to our psyche and it was received. So we need a modulation. Modulation is simply change, but resolution is a firm decision to do or not to do something. What is your hopes, your dream, and your aspiration? The resolution that you have, the resolution that I have. Making a firm decision doesn't mean that the modulation is there, the changes that I need to take place to manifest it. One morning, when I started this series, I noticed that my heart and brain was having this sly conversation, and it was with one wiring because it was this one emotion, and it was all geared towards my will, a desire, or desires. And there was two input. There was my brain input and there's my heart input. And this is all emotionally driven. But I noticed, because again, this video that this series, I noticed that my psyche, my belief, was connected to like a separate grid, called the self. And so it was an emotionally charged conversation because, again, I'm preparing for the series. I noticed this. And so I caught a glimpse of where these chatters were emanating from based on the variety of topics of conversation mixed with mixed emotion. And the slew of ideas, unprocessed ideas, were deriving from what I call my psyche miscellaneous vault, right? The section of my unconsciousness, the section of the unconsciousness where the unresolved questions take turns trying to get answers, determined to figure out why couldn't I, do X, Y, and Z 5 years ago? Why couldn't I do it last year? Why? And those are the questions the brain and the heart was trying to figure out, determined to figure out. Because resolutions are such an innate, personal, aspiring dream that we want to manifest. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is great. That's awesome. Unresoluted resolution keeps popping up, keep on coming to our forefront of our emotions. So an assorted amount of assorted subject matters, random themes, active in the now to gain perspective about what happened in the past. And that's why we keep on tying the resolution to the new year. Ironically, the resolution has sometimes no relevance in figuring out process stage. It's not that we need to figure it out. The application of modulation change is what is relevant. The unresolved query, that emotional brain and heart, that failing to find the quote unquote or that reason. And that's a part of what keeps a resolution stagnant. The reason I'm having this lengthy discussion is because these are the same conversation between the brain and the heart, and the heart and the brain, that cycle. This is the same conversation that bleeds into the new year. So we're having this divergent conversation taking place, and divergent is like moving or extending in different direction from a common point. There is the brain and the heart emotional dialect with no psychological input. And the commonplace is our being, who we are. That's the commonplace, our entirety. So there is our physiological sense, and then there is our psychological sense. And then our physiological and psychological happenstance is startling because there are two different motions. With this video, my intent is to bring them together. So it's like the concept of patting your head, or patting my head and rubbing my stomach at the same time. Why is that difficult? And that's because there's two different motions happening. And neither emotion, is very difficult within itself, but simultaneously, it could be a challenge. So what do we get when we try rubbing both at the same time? Contradiction in motion. So does the brain and heart emotions and the psyche, the belief system. So we're going to take a look at both in operation, in motion, and see if we could get some modulation changes that we can incorporate to help us along. Let's look at the concept of wired belief, psychologically bound. And what came to mind is, say, a landline. Not much. We don't have a lot of landline, but at one time That's all that individual had in their home were landlines, a stationary phone, which was useful. And yes, so with a landline, there's landline at work, landline were at homes, at markets, at malls, and it was stationary. As I said, it was a reliable tool with limited reach. And the psyche belief without modulation is the same way. And so if I unplug, say, a landline, a phone, and carry it around with me, I will not have service. It's not a cell phone. And that's how it is. I would not have connection. Connection has ceased. It doesn't matter what I do or what I say. It's a wired, connected device. And installed belief is stock still with no movement, completely still. The emotional enthusiasm between the brain and the heart doesn't jolt the psyche, it doesn't jolt the belief. It's like unplugging, again, a landline phone and trying to get signal from a cell tower. It's the same thing this year, unplugged from one year and placed in the next year, a resolution. This year, I am going to, and you could insert, I'm going to, whatever the resolution is. The resolution is stated, but it doesn't have that modulation. It is still because it doesn't have the belief that is needed to support it, just pure emotion. And so we place our hope in the power of the new year, amplifying a belief in the possibility of quote unquote new in regards to hope. Does change happen in that beginning? Having the same mindset, new in the inference of numerical, the new year doesn't hold the magic, it's fairy tale belief that is ascribed to it. Answers, though, are in the networks. Solution and problems have answers that are equally imperative to resolution, and that's the gift of knowing that problems hold answers also. So if I have a problem in my psyche as far as the belief about the resolution, it doesn't line up with my emotion, there is an answer there. We just have to find the modulation to help it along. Having a model helps to gain insight to challenges through particular lenses. Consciousness is great, all about consciousness. Surface levels are wonderful. However, under consciousness doesn't mean non-existence. Foreground ourselves mean our psyche, our belief come to the forefront with special interests. Not special interests like, the special interest group, but special interest group, not external, but special interest group within ourselves. Becoming that's what I talked about in one of I think the last video 4 about system engineering, knowing ourselves, the compilation of our beautiful being, knowing who we are. That's what I'm talking about, that special interest. So since we have discussed communication, modulation, system engineering in this series, all particulars to resolutions, I found a model that encompassed consciously and under conscious in regards to operation, and we can glean from him gain awareness from the father of telecommunication, Alexander Graham Bell, the man and his creation, resolution extraordinaire. Sidebar though, I know that there are other contributors that have documented their expertise in this area of telecommunication, but he had the patent. So that's that. That's who we're going to go with. Alexander Graham Bell, he can expand on resolutions beyond the New Year's. The first thing I learned from Mr. Bell was that I should say that pertain to resolution is to expect irony. I'm going to define that. Definition is important when it comes to irony in regards to this series. An event that seems deliberately contrary to what one expects and is often amusing as a result, something other than, and the contrast between expectation and reality. So I'm gonna stop our video, the video at this moment. And the irony that I want to delve into is the irony of modulation changes that occur that wasn't expected. Some have made it the limitation, but in the next video, we're going to take a look at how irony changed our entire existence, not for just this generation, but past generations in regards to telecommunication, based on Alexander Graham Bell and the resolution that he initially set out to accomplish, how irony changed our entire existence and his. Welcome to the Scent of Beauty. Thank you for listening.